and I did too. And he just shook his head and laughed like I should have figured he was gonna. So, but I want to get into some. Did I see a hand? Was that your hand?
Yeah, and as I've been listening to you over the years and been around you and stuff, and seeing how free you are, and I've seen you since early 2000, and you're just as bubbly today as you were back then.
It's not so. My fault.
No.
But I believe. Go ahead.
And when you're around that, it's like, well, hey, this is really real. So you start seeking and finding and get into that place, like the soaking, the intimate time with Jesus, the intimate time with God. But along with that, I found too, it's a place of where you talk about becoming selfless. It's surrendering everything that there is. It doesn't matter what comes up. If it's not surrendered, it has to be surrendered.
That's exactly right. And here's why that's so important. It's not some legalistic thing with God. I have to have all of you or I have none of you. So it's not like that. See, until you become completely surrendered, you won't completely see different than you've seen before. You'll see through what you don't let go of. You'll still see through the way that seems right to a man. At what point does your mind get renewed? See, it says, do not be conformed to the world, but this is phenomenal. Transformed. How? By the renewing of our mind. I meditate day and night in the Word. I start saying yes to the Word. I yield. That's the place of surrender. All of a sudden, the way that I thought was the way is confronted by the way. And in humility, I yield and say, this is higher wisdom. This is deep. This is awesome. Or, wow, this wasn't wisdom at all. This is the truth. And it's a whole joyride of just being transformed through the knowing of truth. And then your whole eye, this whole gospel's designed to change the eye you look through. To see situations through love, through Him. This is the biggest stumbling of our Christian lives. We don't get this understanding. We're just trying to do good works for God, and we're just trying to stay faithful within the church and live a pretty good life and put on a pretty good showing, but we don't see the change that comes through just seeing everything through love and different in the value of people and selfless. See, if there's an ounce of self, you're going to look through the complications of self and whatever that brings and means in a situation. You're going to look at a situation of how this affects me instead of love for the person. It's the automatic response. When that's your motive, when there's a motive down in you that's less than surrender, what Anthony's saying, then your eye is going to channel through that and agree with that. And you don't realize, because you are pure, you love God, you know you need a Savior, but yet there's still as much fear or anxiety or hurt or jealousy in some people's lives that absolutely you look at them and you know they love Him and understand the beauty of what He's done this way. But He wants to take it. He doesn't want to come and just love you. He wants you to become that love, because you and Him are one, and He made you in His image. So the whole finished work of Christ, I say it over and over, is not to get you to heaven. It's to get heaven back inside of you and transform your nature back to His, so that you're in the world and not of it, and you shine forth as a light holding fast the word of life. It's Philippians 2. Amen. Trish? Did you have a question? Can I repeat it, or do you have a long comment? You need a mic? Okay, I'll just repeat it, she said.
How do you know, how can, like, the whole surrender and not being selfish, not be a doormat, not be...
that's an important question to ask, because some people have a doormat, they think they can be a doormat. I can't be a doormat. Jesus wasn't a doormat. That was the most unjust act ever done to a man. He wasn't a doormat. He was the perfect example of love. He took no account of a suffered wrong, and what He did for the better and sake and whole of the whole. I mean, for the sake of the whole, He gave His life. Our psychological thinking would tell Jesus, man, you don't need to go through this. Man, you can't let people treat you. You just can't let people walk all over you, brother. You are so pure and so loving and mean well. And there's a time, sir, you need to draw a line. You can't go die on that cross. When Peter told him this will never happen to you, he said, Peter, you're listening to the devil and you need to get back in tune with God. You know what he said? You're thinking like man thinks. Why? Because man thinks for himself. So watch this. When you're watching Jesus and you begin to value Jesus, Now watch, you're going to see something about Peter and why he got so sternly corrected, okay? Because when you start valuing somebody and really caring for somebody and they're meaning something to you, then you sentimentally defend them. You attack anything that threatens them because they're a blessing to you. Now, we call it love. Watch. You know what Peter was saying when he said, this will never happen to you? He was telling him what's going to happen. He said, this will never happen to you. And Peter, Jesus really corrected him. He said, get behind me, Satan. He was saying, man, that mindset's coming straight from the pit of hell. Why? Because it was totally self-serving. It had nothing to do with love for Jesus. It had to do with themselves. Watch what Peter was saying. This can't happen to you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and ain't nobody taking you from me. I ain't living without you, and they aren't doing this to you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and this shall never happen to you. You're amazing. You're a gift from God. You're awesome. Da, 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 da. And then because of that little twist of self-interest, we start identifying psychologically that, you could be a doormat. I say this and I chuckle because it's so true. Like we have this phrase in the church all the time, and I get people to come and they counsel with me all the time, and they say, yeah, but you don't understand. They are so emotionally abusing me. And in the church, we believe that's possible, and that's why we're emotionally abused. It's impossible for you to emotionally abuse me. I know who I am. Totally impossible. There's no way you could. I don't care if you talk mad at me, scream at me, and curse me. Every time I come out of my front door to come to this church, if there's people chanting with signs and calling me terrible things. How is that emotionally abusing me? The only reason in a marriage you can get emotionally abused by your spouse that doesn't see the value of you or who you are is because you don't realize the reason they can't love you is because they can't love themselves. They don't see the value of their own life. They don't love their own flesh. And instead of hurting for them and crying, we get hurt by them instead of hurting for them. And then all our prayers are hinged based on hurt instead of hurting. Oh boy, come on. This is all going to come out in the love thing, and there's a little bit coming out now. But just because you believe you can be emotionally abused, you're a target. You're just a sitting duck waiting to happen. You're just abuse waiting to happen. You can't emotionally abuse me. It's a funny thought to me. See how flaky I get when I preach it? Why? Because I know who I am. Come on, if somebody's emotionally abusing me, it's because they don't know who they are, and they obviously don't know who I am. So it's their capacity. It's all they know. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Our hearts should cry for people in that situation. It's so important for you to be rooted and established and grounded in truth so that nothing else can eat your lunch and identify you. So you don't put on the harsh words of people. You don't put on the neglecting rejection of people. Come on, what are Christians doing rejected and even counseling and talking about it? Because we don't know who we are. How can you reject me now that he's accepted me? And that is not some arrogant, audacious place that says, well, I don't care if you don't like me. You don't have to like me. Jesus loves me. You don't need to accept me. He's accepted me. No, you've already been hurt. Talking like that. It's not some hi-ho triumphant declaration that's at the cost of your value to protect myself. No, it's a sincere man. So how can you reject me? I'm in, guys. So if you don't see the value of my life, if you don't understand the purpose and destiny of your and my life, and you're misreading it, why am I rejected? And how can I lay down my life and you not appreciate it and me become a doormat when I love you? Jesus wasn't a doormat, but psychology would reveal him as a doormat. Certain circles and peers, if you left it up to Peter and the disciples, he would have been a doormat. And if Jesus had the ability to be talked out of truth, he could have been maybe compelled then by his peers to not go to that extreme because he's the last person that deserves that, and people just don't appreciate you. And there's a time you need to just take a stand and let people reap what they sow because da-da-da-da. And you could wrap language around that all day long and miss love. And Jesus would have nothing to do with that. And actually called it the devil, guys. He said, you're not thinking like God thinks, you're thinking like man thinks. So he attached The devil and man not thinking like God together. Come on. Sentimentally, we've intervened in situations. Sentimentally, we've counseled and befriended people and people we've taken a liking to, and we've tried to protect them, but we've done that out of our own sentimental hearts because we know how we'd feel if they were in their shoes, and we're trying to save them from something, only empowering us to hold on to ourselves. No, we need to be saved from ourselves. That emotionally abused when it doesn't, it's very challenging to people because we've embraced the language. We accommodate, we understand what it means to be emotionally abused, and we accommodate it. We think it's possible, guys. And because we think it's possible, we are emotionally abused. Look, I'm not exploiting my wife, but when I got saved, my wife got saved with me after 7 weeks, and then I was growing, and she started comparing herself to me and other things, and people were loving on me, and oh, you're amazing, and she'd hear this constant, your husband is amazing, your husband is, and then she started to believe that she's not amazing, that they're only talking to her because she's my wife, and all of a sudden she has no value, I have all the value, and she's just on for the ride. So I would tell her, Kim, don't let that happen to you. That is just a lie. You're this and you're this. Well, you're supposed to tell me that. Well, that's the right thing to tell me. Well, you just need to tell me that. Well, for about 6 years, she lost herself and went, I've never shared the depth of stuff with you, but and now it's on tape, and but it's not her. God has been growing her out of all that. But who knows, every person needs God reality for their own heart. Who knows, I can tell you all day you're valuable and loved, but until you get alone and open your heart and say, Father, you really do value me and love me, there's no faith to receive a grace for a revelation. It's just knowledge, and yet there's constantly things contesting it. So my wife went into this deep thing for about 6 years and didn't even want to live, and was like introverted and didn't even want to go out of the house and didn't even want to go to church or nothing. And yet she was my wife, and I'm ministering, call of God. You know, we think we live in a glass house of people. Just think what I could have done with that if I didn't understand what I preached to you. See, the reason I preach all this stuff is I have great privilege to manifest it all and walk through all the privileges of trials and adversity, glorying in tribulation, because you can manifest truth because it's not about you. So none of it's a pain in the butt or a hard time or, oh my God, you don't know what I've been through. Self-conscious, self-conscious, self-conscious. Man, talk to Jesus, see if it compares. Wonder if he came and said, man, you ain't gonna know what they put me through. Just look at the sad tale he would tell sitting on a rock. I was totally perfect, totally pure. I loved people unfailingly, and they rejected me. They blasphemed about me. They called me a devil. I actually healed their sick, and they called me a demon-possessed Samaritan. They thought I was a devil. They were so bound with religion, so stiff-necked and obstinate, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And he could just be sitting feeling sorry for himself and want somebody to just understand. Oh, boy, I'm preaching good. So think of my language. All of a sudden, I need prayer. I need ministry. All of a sudden, oh, my God, my wife, she's not on page. How can I walk together if I don't have the synergism with my spouse? I'm so limited until until the devil lets go of her, until God, you deliver. Oh, I'm this, I'm that. Oh, my God, I got to cover up. I got to protect. I'm limited. Oh, brother, would you pray for me? Yeah. Hey, I got a prayer. Yeah, my wife. Oh, my God. I don't even understand what you're saying, but I see it all the time. I never even asked for prayer. I never felt like I needed prayer. Can I be honest with you? This might, I don't know if you can hear this, God. I've been saved 16 years. It's not wrong to ask people for prayer. There's times you need encouragement. Prayer. I don't remember ever feeling like I was hurting and needed prayer. But why? Because of what I believe. There's always an answer in him. Is that to mean people that need prayer? No, that's what I don't want you to hear. But what I'm saying is, we all have a story. If I tell you mine in detail, it might be important. I couldn't just because of people involved in exploiting things. But if I tell you my story in detail, you'd probably understand why I'm what you see. Because I've been through more than you can imagine, as close to home as you can think, called marriage, to all kinds of stuff. But it's this I'm teaching you, and this belief that sees clear the whole way through and doesn't make it what it's not. Because if it would be about me right now and my wife's in that place, I'm in deep trouble. Now I'm a hard-hearted, subverted minister, never got to fulfill my calling, and there's a deep resentment towards my wife because if she would have been strong and ran with me, we could have done this and went to the nations and did this, and oh my God, and now I'm sitting with regret, and 25 years later I got sorrow and regret in my heart, and this is my story, and this has become my garment. Come on, that's so twisted. Because the whole time I'm doing that, Jesus is Lord. Are you all following me? So what do? Well, you certainly don't get frustrated with Kim because you love her and you understand that she's gone through great identity crisis and deception to the point that the stronghold of what she's believing has been so strategically planted that you can't even speak to her because of her ear, and you can't even love her, and unless God just supernaturally begins to nurture her and father her, you can't just tell her you're loved by God, you're predestined, there's a time to be born. Well, you're supposed to tell me that. It has to be her revelation. So watch this. So if I'm frustrated with her and I'm harsh with her and saying, girl, you need to get with it. How am I revealing God's love and releasing God's love? No, I'm walking in total patience. I'm not even in a belief system where she's at can be a detriment to me at all. It just makes a draw on love. It just makes a draw on compassion and mercy. I'm not married to her for my sake. Hello? See, I can talk like this because I've lived this and lived this. And I know what I'm talking about. It's fun for me. Because I watch people would call me to pastor them and counsel them in their marriages and weren't even going through an eighth of the things I was in the middle of. And they were calling me and they were devastated. And nobody knew what I was in the middle of. And I was the one giving them counsel and they weren't even going through an eighth of the scenario. And just because their spouse was being mean, they were falling apart. Or you know this, and well, they don't ever want to agree with me. Well, when I say this, they want this. Well, I don't know, I can never be one with them. And now they're ready to give up on Christ. I'm like, what? Time after time I get these phone calls, I would say, Lord, this is getting funny. I'd be like, and I was like, these people are calling me. And it was like I went, duh. It was like he said, don't you get it? Because you don't see yourself as a man with a problem. And if your situation is much more extreme than some of these phone calls, don't you see why they're calling you? Because you have something to give them. Because you don't see you can give them the perspective you're living by without exploiting the situation. Do you get what I'm saying? That's why you hear me say to people, don't exalt your story as if you've been through more than the person beside you. Or we're just making a draw on war stories. And then we're reduced to patting each other and saying, I'm sorry, brother. You've been through that. And we're just comparing ourselves among ourselves with our war stories. And accomplishing what? If anything, permission for being the way we are and the way we feel. And if we can share a deeper story than the next person, we're more qualified to be less whatever. Come on, that's all self. I just saw that this weekend. A lady said, but you don't know what I've been through. I mean, it rose up in her. She's mad. I said, is that what's important? Knowing what you've been through? I said, honey, are we supposed to compare our stories right now? Listen to me, sweetheart. I took her by the face, held her, looked her in the eyes. You've seen Christ in me all day. That's why you're talking to me. You respect me in the Lord. Don't you shift gears on me. I got that straight with her and held her face. That's how I am with folks. Because I love people. And I don't need to set her straight. I want to rescue her from the lie that's eating her lunch. I don't need to be right and show her up. I want to see her free. And it got to the point where she laid on me and bawled and cried. It was really fun. But what was coming out was the justification of her feelings that were unsanctified. But you don't know what he did to me. Could you imagine God the Father sitting on the throne looking at humanity saying, you'll never know what they did to me. I created them with a vision and a hope. I gave them one command and they broke that, and many more since. They don't even look nothing like me. And I'm their father and they don't even seem like they really care most of the time. And the list would go on and on if God sat with that mentality and viewed humanity, wouldn't it? And then we assume the right to even have one-liners and situations with that mindset. No. Let's let old things pass away, and behold, all things become new, so we can rightly assess life through him. Because if God's not sitting on the throne assessing you that way, why do you embrace the right to look through other eyes?